Our first speaker today is going to talk about that, but more specifically is going to talk about how important the role of supporting the development of staff in actually delivering in what looks like a very radical approach to higher education. So it's my great pleasure to welcome to the conference Professor Ali Armellini. Thank you.
Okay, I believe you can all hear me. Can you hear me at the back?
Yes.
Amazing student behaviour is being deployed as we speak with tons of empty seats.
Hey!
And people sort of packing all the back tables. Is it me or is there an echo here? Maybe it's me. Put that down a bit. Alright. So you think you're going to hear me for about half an hour or a bit more. You will hear a bit of that, but you will also be asked to do things. Okay, so we get ready. Active blended learning as a new normal. I'll try to unpick and unpack that as the presentation moves on. So let me start by saying one or two things about who we are at the University of Northampton. And this is the corporate slide that I've got to give. So we have the mission of transforming lives and inspiring change, and we are all of those things that the slide says, which I'm not going to read to you. But essentially, we are a small East Midlands university with a focus on high quality teaching, employability, and social impact. That's what we are. We have a range of partners in the UK and across the world, and we try to work with them and staff, the students, in the pursuit of this mission, transforming lives and inspiring change. I would also like to introduce a second mission. The top one is the university mission, of course. The bottom one is the mission of the Institute of Learning and Teaching in Higher Education within the University of Northampton. Is derived from the one at the top, enabling transformational learning through inspirational teaching. So what does that look like? Because of the name of this conference and because of the acronym used, it would be wrong not to say a few nice things about ourselves and the amount of bling that we've been getting in the last few weeks. So those are two examples, and we're very proud of them. Of course, that's a bit of feedback we received. So that's also a bit of the corporate spiel that I'd like to share with you. But that's the vision. That's the bit that I'd like you to start thinking about. Who are our learners? Who are our graduates? What do our graduates look like? What do our colleagues look like? And what do our researchers look like? So that's a summary of our vision. That's what we would like to do and to achieve as the Institute of Learning and Teaching. What's that? Oh, Geraldine, what's that? That's the Waterside campus. That's taken from the live feed of the webcam over the weekend. One of the shops. That's one of the buildings. We're building a £330 million campus in the middle of Northampton. We're taking this development as an opportunity to change a few other things, not just the buildings, as you will see shortly. So that's one of them. That's another one. This is what we refer to as the Learning Commons. And while all these wonderful developments are taking place in terms of actual build, what we in the Institute of Learning and Teaching are really concerned with is are there any other changes that we should be putting in place under our. So we have a learning and teaching plan that has, I'm not going to bore you with the detail, but it has something called Waterside Readiness there aligned with the UK Professional Standards Framework for Learning and Teaching in Higher Education. Waterside readiness is about active blended learning as a new form, which is the topic of today. The learning and teaching plan has a range of other things like supporting colleagues to achieve professional recognition, i.e. higher education and academic fellowships. It has elements to do with assessment, it has elements to do with consultancy and revenue generation and all the rest of it. But the focus of today is active blended learning. What does that look like at Northampton? What are we doing? What have we done? What have we got wrong? What have we got right? The term waterside readiness was not coined by us, it was coined by colleagues. Are you waterside ready? Is what they asked. And what they mean by that is, what does a session that you run look like? Does it have a series of monologues in big auditoriums called lectures? Are those interactive? Are they not? Do they have an online element that goes with it? Does the online element interact meaningfully with the face-to-face element? All of that is part of the dialogue that's been going on for 2.5 years now. So I'm going to show you a 52-second video. Some of you might have seen it. In the true spirit of waterside readiness, exposure to content is probably the least important part. What you do with that content. So you are going to do something with this content. In this case, it's very simple. I'm going to ask you, if you were to summarize one key message you get out of this video in one line, what would that be? So, because we've tested this before and it didn't work, I'm going to do a little bit of trickery here, and I hope it does work now. So here it is, your task. What's your summary of this in one line? And I will pick on some people.
At the University of Northampton, we want your learning to be meaningful. We know you want time to discuss your subject with your tutor face-to-face, but also need the freedom to delve deeper into the topic with our support. Combining different learning and teaching activities gives you the support you need and the flexibility you want to learn. So when you study a topic, all your face-to-face, online and off-site learning connects and combines to help develop the knowledge, understanding and skills you need. This approach is much closer to the real world of work beyond graduation. You will be actively involved in how you learn, how you work with others, and this will help you stand out, having already sharpened the skills employers look for. We want you to be engaged, inspired and prepared for your future, and we will be there to help you every step of the way.
That's it. Any volunteers? What's next? Speak one at a time, otherwise. Yeah, there's a volunteer right in this here.
Flexible active learning.
Flexible active learning. There's a hand going out at the back.
Meaningful learning for students.
Meaningful learning from students. Yes. Yeah.
Actively involved in how we learn from now in the future.
Nice. That's nice. Yes.
Flexible learning depending on student or institution needs.
Yes. And there's still one word I'm looking for that no one can say, which means that the video failed. Yes?
Is it the students is at the centre of that learning?
Yes. Yes. Carry on.
Is it very collaborative?
Yes, indeed. And there's one more bit.
Inclusive choice learning methods.
Yes. A mixed diet of methods. Yes.
Online.
A little bit of that.
Is it a holistic
Being
approach?
ready for
Thank you. Yes. Readiness for work. There were lots of uniforms and work-related pictures which you may or may not have captured, but there is a focus on employability in this video. But obviously, it didn't come through in this group, so I'm going to have to discuss the matter in marketing. It might be interesting for you to know that when a bunch of academics sit with a group of people from a marketing department to put together a video like that, sounds sparse and fun. The original script for that was very different from this. And that's the script we have to produce. The marketing original script for that was very different from it. The script that marketing had to produce. Now, that's the result. And the idea is to emphasize the blend between what happens online, what happens face-to-face, and what happens for the world of work. Now, what does active blended learning mean? So, the clearest way to explain this that we found is in 3 bullet points. An ABL course is taught for ABL if it's got student-centered activities to develop knowledge, understanding, independent learning, and digital fluency. Not literacy. Literacy ain't enough. Fluency. It has a core bit, a collaborative bit that happens face-to-face. We will not lose the face-to-face part. And that's very important. Because some of the rumors that were being spread as the Waterside project developed is, oh, the University of Northampton will become an online university. What are the other examples? We value face-to-face time as much as our students do. We will continue to be a face-to-face university. We would not be spending £230 million on a new campus if we were going entirely online. We would probably, in that case, downsize to a garage. Instead, we are spending money and effort to become a better campus-based university. That face-to-face element blends, combines, links explicitly with a meaningful online component that runs together with as a single meaningful whole, not as a separate strand. And then, third point, that's develop autonomy, change maker attributes, and ability skills. The change maker discourse might be the topic of a separate conversation with you, and I'm happy to expand on that. But in a sentence, the change maker attributes and the change maker ideology and principles can be put as identifying a problem and doing something with it out. And that is the kind of the community focus that our courses offer. Key words there: student-centered activities, knowledge and understanding, independent learning, digital fluency. Face-to-face lead to online learning activities. This is not online learning resources, online learning activities. The resources are always there, easy to find. What's not easy is to create meaningful activities for students to make sense of those resources. So if I show you that, this is a slide that I've used before, some of you may have seen it. I showed you that. What do you think? Sorry?
Flipped learning.
Oh yes, that's the typical reaction we get, is the flipped approach. Yes. Well, note that the word flip doesn't feature at all in my presentation, because of a number of reasons, but yes, you could look at that and think, oh, that's a flipped approach. And I say to people, oh, right, this is great. Does that work? Oh, yeah, that's, well, and I say, well, sorry, it doesn't. It doesn't work for us, because this bit here is heavily, by definition, content-driven. In other words, you push the resources out to students and you hope that magically people will engage with that and they will come to a face-to-face session fully prepared. It doesn't. The alternative does not guarantee any success whatsoever, but it does give you a better chance of success. And the alternative has a little bit of a gap, a critical gap. In fact, these two things, these two blocks, could be considered to be the same, not a single block. What's the gap? Yes, that's what students do with this. Content is not in what students do with it. So that bit in the middle, we could call pre-session asynchronous online tasks. And technically, you could say that this is activation of schemata, this is what you do in preparation for class, this is your class, and this is your consolidation. However, we can simplify that to that, and that's the simplest form of it. You go to digital resources, some of which are curated by the tutor, others are curated by the students themselves. As I said, many keen students, many able students will do a lot with that alone. However, in the context of Northampton and many other institutions, that collection of resources may not be enough. We've got to scaffold our students to do something meaningful with those resources. That's what we call tasks for sense making. That's what makes the difference between a long, complex list of links, a reading list, a set of books, articles, websites, videos, audio files, radio station, podcasts, all the rest of it. All those are resources, and that's fine. What matters and what takes tutor time is the activities that enable students to make sense, align to the module learning outcomes. Tasks for sense making take time to produce. They take skill to produce. You have to scaffold the tasks themselves. From the beginning of the module to the end of the module, increasing levels of complexity and mixing, blending what you expect your students to do online with what you expect them to do in class, feeding one from the other. It is not the case that students do the tasks online, then they come to a session face-to-face, and the teacher says, oh, thank you for doing those online tasks, and move on to something else. On the contrary, what they do, what the students have done online, provide the student-generated content for what you do face-to-face. Indeed, in my own teaching, I set myself a target of the module I teach, for example, of not using a single PowerPoint slide. Very different from what I'm doing to you today, eh? And I did achieve that by using student-generated content as my slides. And those bits of content came in the form of discussion board posts, came in the form of blog posts, but also came in the form of a variety of other things. Padlets, poplets, thing links, and various other artifacts that my students produce in preparation for the face-to-face bit, using well-designed tasks to get them to engage with resources meaningfully. That is exactly the same thing. So don't get fooled by the sexiness of the drawing. It is the same thing, it's just produced for more of a marketing purpose. But you've got the digital resources, you've got the task of sense making, you've got the analysis, discussion, reflection, and goal setting in class, and you've got your consolidation and action plan. Exactly the same. So that is what active blended learning could look like. Note that these blocks are not fixed. This is not a prescriptive approach, and indeed you can move things around in any way you think is appropriate. For example, in health, colleagues argue that they cannot do that in this order. They would rather have something face-to-face right here, up front, where certain things are done and certain objectives achieved, and that is true across other disciplines too. There may be lab sessions, there may be field visits, all sorts of things. This is not a prescriptive approach, this is just a possible direction of travel with a principle of not using the content as king. So what ABL is just as important as explaining what it is not. So an active blended learning course, or a course is not ABL if it makes regular use of non-interactive lectures. In other words, campuses these days have they have large lecture theatres where you can get 100, 200, 300 people inside. Well, our new campus doesn't have. We have no lecture theatres beyond. One 80-seater and a few 60-seaters. All the rest of the rooms are around about 40, some 25. So if one of these are true, we regard the module as not ready. The virtual learning environment, in our case Blackboard, is primarily a content repository. Why is that a problem? Well, because this is true since the mid-90s when the VLEs first began to appear. I put my content online, therefore my students will be learning, right? No, wrong. If you use your VLE as a content dump, you've got a serious problem. Do you really have a serious problem? And that's exactly what the second bullet point is trying to capture. Thirdly, if online activity, the stuff that students do in preparation for, if those things are merely an add-on to the face-to-face sessions and not fully integrated with it, then we have a problem. And again, at Northampton we have a cycle of enhancement, a portfolio of enhancement of evidence for the module to remain in the books. Well, if you have to have evidence of continuous enhancement. And part of that is staff participation in relevant workshops, regular redesign, peer feedback, external examiner feedback, and particularly student feedback. So, to be clear, ABL is not online teaching. Northampton is not becoming, will not become, and is not planning to have anything to do with the Open University or become a mini Open University at all. We will continue to be a campus-based one, as I said before, and we value face-to-face teaching as much as our students. So ABL is our new normal. This is not something we do in addition to our job. This is our job. To the point where we have removed a couple of statements from the module specification template. Do you have such a thing in the university here? Where you have to specify the learning outcome and the assessment, all of that? Well, previously it used to say mode of study, campus-based, blended, distance, a few other things. No, actually, blended is the standard. So we took out all this campus-based, face-to-face discourse. This is the standard. And it is our standard approach, and as time passes, we're already thinking what will happen after this is no longer the standard. Key question that I've asked our students several times. Does ABL mean that you guys need to work hard? Yes, it does. You will not be spoon-fed. You will not be here in a lecture theatre, sitting at the back doing Facebook while the lecturer is talking. You are expected to do more. And if you haven't done that in recent months or recent years, I do invite you to go to any university, walk to the back of a big lecture theatre when it's being used, and just stand back and look. It's a very interesting experience, particularly when the lecture is not too engaging. Just do it. Tell us what to do about it. Ultimately, we want to bring about positive change. We want to bring about positive change in our students, in our staff, in the way we do things, in the way that our university and the sector operates. But to do that, you've got to bring people with you. And the next few minutes of this presentation will deal with bringing colleagues with us in this. And we have had, it's fair to say, a fair few problems in relation to this. I am not presenting this to you, particularly the next part towards the end, as a wonderful picture of Northampton, because it's not a wonderful picture. I'm going to try and show you what's been happening, warts and all. So, the approach we take is one based on three things, three principles. To bring about change and bring colleagues with you, you need an evidence base, you need support, and you need agency. And I'll try and briefly explain what I mean by each of those three. Evidence. I know what you're talking about, but show me works before I engage with that change myself. It's a typical statement you hear. And academics tend to expect evidence in formats that they're familiar with. They expect this evidence to come in the form of books, journal articles, or other forms of academic work, scholarly work, that they identify themselves with. So this is an example that you can download from the ILT website, which is a piece of research recently completed on the student view of active blended learning. What barriers they encountered, what issues they found. This was led by one of our colleagues from Northampton, Elizabeth Palmer, who, with a group of colleagues, carried out a piece of research with a couple of hundred students and various members of staff, and published a couple of things, one of which is available on the site. Evidence for change. Now, it's interesting that when you engage in something that might be called pretty radical, sometimes you do not have the evidence because it hasn't been done before, or because it hasn't been done or documented in a way that colleagues can identify themselves. Now that is interesting because it gives you great opportunities for innovation. Those who engage with the change without the evidence are the true innovators. They may fail. They may get it completely wrong. But when you're going to get something wrong, you might as well get it really wrong. And we have done that in the form of funding projects, small-scale projects up to £15,000, where we've enabled people to engage with pretty crazy ideas, some of which have succeeded, many of which have not. Those are the colleagues that engage with these sort of change processes without the evidence, and are happy to do that. So evidence is key to bring colleagues with you. You've got to show things work. You've got to show which bits of those things don't work. And they are more likely to work. Second, I said support. And there's various elements of support that you can see listed there. In essence, when someone has seen the evidence, they are prepared to discuss the change. What they want to know is, that's all very good, what have you got in place to help me do it? And for that, we've got a pretty robust structure at Northampton, where support is offered on a proactive basis. We knock on people's doors, we go to people to ask them how they're doing, what help they need. In addition, they come to us for various forms of support in the form of workshops, leading to recognition, as I said earlier, but also workshops simply for the purposes of enhancement of projects. So support is the second key part of bringing people with you. And finally, agency. Whatever you do with colleagues, with evidence or without it, with support or without it, ultimately, whoever presses the button with the student is the tutor in the classroom. So they've got to have the power to decide what to do, what is best in their context, but never take that away from them. So the three elements, evidence, support, and agency, are here. Consultation and collaboration across the academics in the university and the professional services leads to some kind of change, which may not be quite as pretty and as round as that circle suggests. It could be a little bit bumpy, but that's the road we've taken to make change at our university. There is a little bit of a subtext here, which is the color coding at the top, which refers to the key performance indicators that we've got in the university, but that's, again, a separate conversation. So evidence-based change. Here, we've got evidence, support, and agency again. Evidence in the form of research and scholarly activities. Practice, evaluation of that practice and evaluation of impact. Feeding into policy. So that takes me to the second little more I wanted to share with you, which is research to practice to impact to policy. And again, that is what we've been using to turn all these wonderful outputs into something meaningful that changes all those serious documents that govern the university on the basis of evidence. It's not, it should not, it cannot be the other way around. You cannot twist the evidence to make sure it fits policy. It has to be evidence-based. So that's roughly how we've been bringing colleagues with us at all levels in the academic sector and the professional services. We have had some challenges that I will summarize in the last few minutes, one of which is of a pedagogic nature. They have those views on teaching might challenge what we're putting forward for very good reasons. The PSRB argument, the professional bodies argument, oh no, but nursing requires me to have so many hours of this or so many hours of that. And the contact time argument. What does count as the contact time? The views on teaching, colleagues may have a very solid education background and they really may have very good reasons for doing or not doing what we propose. The professional bodies argument actually, active blended learning not only makes that possible but enhances the opportunities we get to meet and exceed the requirements of the professional bodies. And I'll tell you one or two things about contact time in a moment. Now, you can guess roughly how long ago that picture was taken. Any guesses? You mean last week? About 1930s? No? Okay, 1945. Right. That one?
Now you're talking.
Now we're talking. I knew this would engage you. The Romans and others knew quite a bit about these things and the use of space, particularly the use of amphitheatres like that. And of course, things have changed a lot since. Maybe not. And this is the sort of environment I was asking you to explore. If you go into an environment like that and you stand at the back and you start looking around what people are doing, you will find some interesting surprises. What's worse, if you are at the front and you are delivering that lecture and you have a camera at the back, that's also interesting. Contact time, therefore, is not necessarily of any quality, of any good quality if you are in such an isolating environment as a massive lecture. Being 1 in 300 in a very unengaging lecture is not exactly quality contact time. So we've used the quality assurance agency definition of contact time here, and that's what it is. And note that the most controversial part of it is that it's got 2 bits. Face-to-face bit and the online bit. And yes, depending on what you do online, some of it can count as contact time. The problem is distinguishing contact time in the online environment from independent study. If you give them stuff to do and completely disappear as a tutor, that is not contact time. Contact time in the online environment is characterized by personalization and tutor visibility. If those are absent, that's independent study. Now that message wasn't clearly articulated by us at the start, and we took responsibility for it, and we did best we could to re-articulate it and represent it to colleagues and particularly to students in sessions in the student view. So that's a key thing. What is and what isn't contact time? Secondly, workload and space. We do have some large cohorts. We have timetable problems and we'll continue to have them on the new campus. We will have no staff offices on the new campus. No staff offices. That's been a bit of a... the Vice Chancellor hasn't got an office already and won't have one on the new campus either. And some of us already work in shared offices. Now the new campus will give you a chance to work in really shared offices, bigger offices. And then there's the claim that blended learning means more work. Well, it does in terms of redesign. Once you redesign your course, it is your job, it is what you do. I mean, the counter argument does it. Are you trying to say that when blended learning was off the agenda, you never refreshed, redesigned, or updated your course? Well, blended learning does mean more work at the start. You might need to change some of your practices. But in the mid to long term, it doesn't. The third challenge, digital transformation. There's a lot of work already done here. This is by Oxford Brooks, for example. The first steps, develop and outstanding. There's a lot of literature on this I can go into if you like. But here at Northampton, this is part of the strategic document, Transforming Lives, Inspiring Change. This is the bit that talks about the digital transformation piece. What does it look like? Well, non-literacy, literacy, competence and fluency in stages, just to describe this graphically. No idea, even with a map. Digital literacy, well, with a map I can more or less get it. Digital competence, I no longer need a map, I can do my own stuff. And digital fluency, not only can I do all the above, but I can bring others with me. So, if we look at those three, literacy, I know about some useful stuff, and with help, I can enhance my courses. In the competence box, I can enhance my teaching autonomously. And in the fluency box, not only can I do the previous box, but I can bring others with me for institutional transformation and growth. We've had some challenges in us in relation to this.
Ali, we've got 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Digital literacy, my knowledge and understanding. Digital competence, my practice. We'll see the practice of this. The final challenge is communication. And before you say anything else, We got this wrong at Northampton. I think the communications people, or the communications team, at the beginning of the Waterside project in particular, confused provision of information with a deliberate attempt to consult, engage, and find shared ground. And that generated a lot of confusing messages, inconsistencies, things that turned out to be rumors that had to be then debunked, and we had lots and lots of serious problems with this. I should point out that the Waterside project and the new campus opening its doors on the 1st of September 2018 is not the reason for ABL. ABL was going on even before we knew about it. What Waterside does is it gives us a deadline, and for some reason everyone wants to get ready before that. I invite you to consider, to conclude, what Google look for in our graduates. And they look for self-starters, self-propelled learners who are comfortable with ambiguity and who can connect. That's what they want, explicitly. And that's the source. I'd like you to invite you to think what staff talent we're looking for. And I've put it to you that using the same three principles, we want self-propelled learners as our colleagues, ideally surround ourselves with colleagues who are better than us, within and beyond our discipline, who can teach, who can cope with failure, who can seek and offer feedback and take that constructively. People who are comfortable with ambiguity, particularly in our case, associated with change, learning, teaching. Who can form and share opinions and galvanize teams. And people who can connect, who can learn with and from those who are not like us. Who are digitally fluent and who can be agents of change in this environment. That's the sort of colleagues you want. And one of the key principles of leadership, as you know, is find colleagues who can do the job better than you. That's what matters.
Thanks, Ali. Now, we've got time for a very quick question, really, before we move on to our next sessions. Anyone burning with a question? Nick? Yeah.
Centre of it is clearly the task for sense making, and thank you for explaining that, because you spoke before about how it's working. Now I do understand, and I see the logic of the rationale. How are you going to monitor? I know we have the same issue, how are you going to monitor lectures, how are you going to monitor any form of delivery, but how are you going to monitor those tasks for sense making? Because that really is the nub of it. And like in walls, lectures are bad, yeah, it's bad, but if those go wrong, and they are just a bank of resources, the whole thing comes crumbling down.
Yes, yes. We don't have a pedagogic police. We don't want one. So one thing is to monitor the level of change in terms of the design, and for that we've got a dashboard. We have a regular flow of data that tells us what sort of state the different modules, all 1,600 modules, are at in terms of this. At this point, we are on 77.5% of modules that we would consider to be ABL friendly. Now, that is monitored on the basis of a combination of things, one of which is self-reporting, and then another is review at faculty level, subject leader, program leader level, and dean level, and then monitored through the participation of the learning design and learning technology teams. The combination of that gives us this dashboard that is used to report every 3 months. Now, that reports at the level of design. and it does look at the tasks that exist for use in the classroom and for use online. Is that monitoring prone to errors? Yes, but we have to start somewhere. What that monitoring doesn't do is it doesn't look at the actual teaching practice. I mean, you can design the most wonderful course and go into a session like this and deliver it very poorly. Equally, you can design it very badly, but because you're such a good presenter, you can make something very, very good out of it. We don't have a task force or a police force to monitor that. What we do have is a peer observation code of practice. And what the peer observation does is it invites colleagues to peer observe each other as part of the professional recognition. So, to summarize, the answer is yes, we have data that tells us that gives us information on the design, and we have processes in place that enable people to teach better.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. I have a similar question, but from the student point of view. I can see that the task for sense making is very challenging for a lecturer, and also very challenging for students to grasp what is expected of them to do to satisfy an assessment criteria. So what approach do you adopt at university to transfer that message to students through your ABL approach? What is expected of them to do to achieve this criteria to the level they meet the command verb like critical analysis, critical thinking? So how do you basically transfer that message? What approach do you have through ABL process to basically make students realize this is what expected you to do, and what teaching approach you have for that?
Well, there are several questions there.
We've got time for one of them.
I make it a bit simple though. One single thing you could do to inform students what is expected of you do to achieve command verb like critical analysis?
Okay. If we split that up, I talked a lot about the design phase, and the collection of case studies does help not just staff but students too. So what we have is something called a good practice display, and we have a lot of that to show things that have worked and why they have worked. Now that gives people a lot of ideas in terms of teaching practice, in terms of task design, and it gives students a sense of what they are expected to do. Just to be clear, if the task is read this article and be ready to summarize it orally at the next session, well, that's a pretty simple thing. You want rather more than that. If the student, on the other hand, expects that they will come to class with just having read the article diagonally, they know from that evidence base that that is not going to crack it. So, preaching through example, through projects that have published case studies that people can refer to, we have informed both the staff body and the student body. Now, what is and isn't enough is always there's always a very fine line that is highly dependent on the context, the discipline, the tutor, the group size, and various other factors. What we're trying to do is to move beyond the simplistic approach of, a question is a task. Well, sometimes it could be, but you want more than that for a good, substantive task for sense-making.
Great, thank you. Ali, we could sit here all morning having this really interesting conversation. Unfortunately, I feel very guilty because we have to move things along to our next sessions. But I want to thank you for giving us an incredibly engaging experience this morning. This is, I think, incredibly exciting, and we all have a real interest in it, obviously, as academic partners with the University of Northampton. So once again, can we show our applause to Professor Armellini?